has now been around for 3 seasons, and coaches everywhere are saving time and being more efficient when it comes to scout cards. Coach Robinson from Texas says, "The thing I most enjoy is the ease of access to all the scout cards and how I can draw on them if I need to make any changes. Every coach that uses it says that it is so great to use. If you and your staff are tired of the old ways of preparing and using scout cards, check out thecoachpad.com to start enjoying Scout Team and making the 2023 season better than ever."
Welcome back to another episode of the Got Down Backer podcast. Um, we have my good friend here, out Rudolph, the offensive line coach, and his 18 other titles he has. I can't keep track of what they are at Ohio, just co-offense coordinator, run game, all that.
Just general flunky.
Yeah, whatever the title is at the moment. But how have things been since the last time you were on here? Everything good? I mean, it's been I don't think you've been on the podcast, God, in a year and a half. But
it's been a while. It really has.
But we
It's
talk
been a while.
every couple weeks. So I mean, how's everything been?
Everything's great. We had a great spring. Of course, everybody in America says that. And we had a great recruiting class. Of course, everybody in America says that. And but we feel like everything's been going well. Coach Alvin said it the other day, which I thought was awesome. We've got the same full-time staff coming back from last season, and there's probably not very many institutions in college football that can say that. That makes things so much easier. That's always been one of Ohio's big things, is just the consistency and the continuity from year to year. Because it's kind of always been that way, but you generally have to replace a guy or two here or there, but every full-time guy is coming back. So we hit the ground running in the spring, and anytime you play in a bowl game, especially when that's late, as late as we did, you get the extra practices for going to the MAC championship. We felt like basically we got an extra spring ball at the end of last season, and then another spring ball this spring. So just in developing younger guys and that type of stuff, we feel like we're, a good bit further along than actually we were going into last year with our depth.
Okay. And we kind of talked a little bit about it. How has the transfer portal kind of affected this overall schedule for you? Like, I know it's a little hectic, and I know for all of you, it's not just you guys, but like any college coach, it's D1 to D3. The transfer portal has made things interesting, but from just an overall schedule, and I know there's some rule changes that allow you to do a little more too. How's those kind of changes affected you?
The one thing I have found is, used to be, and I know this is transfer portal. The big thing is, used to you would have big recruiting weekends, in January and I know a big part of this is the early signing day as well. You would have a big weekend or two in December before the early signing period, and then you would have big weekends in January, prior to the early signing period. So that has spread things out a little bit. And then the transfer portal, what I find is we are bringing in a guy, two guys, three guys, but we're every part of the calendar that is either quiet or contact. It seems like every weekend we're having an official visit. Not only maybe, one or two guys or one, and their families, but everything is so much more spread out over the calendar compared to what it seemed like it used to be. And I think that's a combination of the early signing period, but also it's a huge part of the transfer portal. Has created that, where it just seems like you're doing official visits all the time, and now unofficial visits are going on constantly. So I think the biggest thing in relation to the calendar is just the recruiting has spread itself out, and you're constantly having official visits.
Okay. Now, the other thing is, like, we talked a little bit, and you guys play week 0 this year. So you're starting earlier.
Yeah.
Week 0 is becoming a more and more common thing, where it used to be like just like Hawaii and a couple other like prime time, like that big matchup to start the year, like 1 versus 4 or whatever. So kind of how has that changed your prep work since you're starting playing a week earlier, but you're also able to start camp a week earlier? Is that changing anything for you? How's that altered your prep? How has starting earlier kind of affected you going into this year?
Couple things. I think first it's affected Jake Miller and our strength staff. And we normally, you normally have a week to let the guys go home, before you get started. So you can have 8 mandatory weeks during the summer where they're with Coach Miller. You still can have that, but we had to back that up. Fortunately, with us starting school, summer at OU starts in mid-May. That helped that transition a lot. If we would have not started summer school till June 1, then that would have been very difficult to get our 8 weeks in, plus give the guys a little bit of break. Our guys are actually getting a pretty good break over the 4th of July, where they can go home because we're going to roll right into fall camp. They're not going to have a very big break at all, like they normally would at the end of the summer workouts going into fall camp. So that's been one thing that's been affected. Our preparation as a staff, we really push the envelope to get our first couple weeks of at least preliminary game planning done during the month of June, so that when we come back, off of vacation in July, we're going to come back a week earlier. All of that stuff is done. All of our prep for camp is done. And really all we're having to do when we get back is really script, to get ready for those first couple of days. So we feel like we're in good shape there. But it took a lot of pushing during the time where you're normally doing a lot of camps and you're doing a lot of official visits, which we did. So we had to balance that differently than we have. And then one of the other big areas that I didn't think about or anticipate, we're actually going to have a lot of young men that are finishing up summer 2 classes, and we're going to be 2 weeks into fall camp, and they're still finishing up their summer classes. Now, fortunately, not all of our guys are in that boat, but some of the guys that are getting ready to graduate, that are pushing to get some classes done, they're going to be taking classes into the second week of summer camp. We're normally, a lot of times during camp, for at least those first couple of weeks of camp, you're just solely focused on football. We're going to have to balance that a little bit, which we haven't always had to do, or at least you may have to do it for the first couple of days, but not that far into camp. So, that's been something, but we are really excited about it because, one, we're playing a great opponent, which I think has helped our workouts, help our young men's preparation, and then, that part of the opponent that you're playing is huge. But then for our schedule going into next season, playing week 0 gives us something we've never had here, which is a true open date, true bye week. We've never had that in my time here. And I don't know I've been here going into 5 years. I don't know before I was here. I hear Coach Alvin talk about it all the time, that this is the first one in a long time where we have a true bye week during the season. Plus, going into Maction, we're going to have another 9 or 10 day. So you got a longer prep going into Maction. So, we're going to hopefully, knock on wood, be able to have a little bit of time during the season to heal up some bumps and bruises that we haven't always had.
Okay, good. Like, and has these, I'll phrase it this way, some of these rule changes allowed you to accelerate your teaching or allowed you to play with anything different? Because, like I said, a lot of the rule changes over the past 2 years have actually given you guys more time, where you used to be very restrictive on what your hours. You could touch anybody, see anybody, do whatever. And now it's kind of open. I'm not going to say it's like the Wild West, but you've got a lot more access to your kids to where the
Yes.
strength path was really the only ones that had access. How has that kind of accelerated either teaching or allow you to play with anything?
Well, the first thing I would say is, number one, you're able to do a summer install. And we don't have any more hours with them than what we used to. We're still bound by the 8 hours a week. And you've got to split that between the weight room and, what you do with them. And then secondly, you can do more football things, but anything that is 11 on 11, you can't do with coaches out there. But we can do drill work. I can do O-line, D-line. You can do drill work with them, which you haven't been able to do. So what it's allowed us to do, in my opinion, is be more prepared going into fall camp, which I think we're going to use that hopefully to give some more breaks in fall camp so our guys' bodies don't get beat up so bad, because we are a little bit further along in installation. We can practice 3 days and then have a day off, or a walkthrough day or whatever. So I think it's gonna allow us to be easier on our guys' bodies, go hard for 2 or 3 days straight and then back off, go hard again for 2 or 3 days straight, but then back off, so that when we do get to the first ball game, our bodies are in a lot better condition and ready for the season. And then on the back end of the year, what I think it's going to do is allow guys to be playing fresher and better football later on in the year, because they were able to back off a little bit during fall camp. And I think just generally for the players, for their safety, I think we're going to see that it's going to greatly help.
Okay. Now, one of the things I really wanted to hit on, because I have an O-line coach who I'm working with right now, and I'm trying to teach him kind of what I want. And I know since I've known you, you've had what, 3 or 4 GAs at this point. Um, just you've cycled them out just because of they've either taken new jobs or they're got their, because you get what, 3 years technically you can.
Yeah, you get 3 in an OU. We actually have in the program that they're in. We try to get them done in 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
So which is good for them, because with Coach Solich's name and with Coach Albin's name, we've been able to generally help them find other jobs, and so it's been a really good thing. The downside of it is you're constantly trying. I've had my first year, we had a gentleman named Stephen Langenkamp, and then he chose after a year. He thought that he wanted to go coach high school football, and he's actually doing a great job. Was at Moeller for a couple of years, helping with their O-line there. He's from Cincinnati, played at Moeller, and then after him, we hired a young man by the name of Lauren Inslee. And Lauren actually probably was a little bit more of a coach than a graduate assistant, because he had actually coached the O-line position at a couple of places prior to coming here. He was on the back end of being able to GA age-wise and number of years that he had been out of school. So he was definitely a little bit more of an O-line assistant rather than a GA. But after a year, he actually got the O-line job at Minnesota Duluth, which is a really good Division II program in Minnesota, and is doing a fantastic job there. Then kind of had a crunch last year where we hired a gentleman that I worked with his dad in the CFL, but we didn't find out till Cam Odom, who had played receiver for us for years, was our receiver GA, and we were transitioning. So really, in actuality, it's been 5 O-line GAs in 5 years. I didn't think about this. Kyle Obley, who is now our receiver GA, does a great job with wide receiver daily, which is out there. He's got a Twitter following and an Instagram following with that. Does a fantastic job with that. But Kyle is a rock star and going to be an unbelievable football coach, and is going to end up being a receiver, quarterback, offensive coordinator type mind. But I thought it was important, and he does unbelievable championship quality work and is brilliant. I thought that while we had Cam, that it would be good for him to come work with the O-line to learn that aspect of it, because I have always felt, if you're a coordinator and you're a skill guy, you never want to be held hostage by your O-line coach, because you don't know, you may not know all the finer details, but you have a good enough idea as a coordinator that you can do certain things or you can't do certain things, but you're not held hostage. And conversely, if you're an O-line guy that's the coordinator, you don't want to be held hostage by your quarterback guys or your receiver guys. You want to know enough about what's going on that if they say, hey, we can't do something, that you can, or you want to say, well, no, we can do that. Anyway, Kyle was going to work with me, and then Cam Odom, a week before fall camp last year, got the receiver GA job at Baylor, which was awesome for him. It put us in a little bit of a bind, but we ended up moving Kyle back to receivers because that's where he was comfortable. And then we hired a gentleman from Boise, had just finished playing. And his dad, John Zamberlin, coached with me in the CFL. And Kenny Zamberlin was his name, was out west, was kind of in flux about what he was going to do, and it was a quick turnaround. So we hired him. He actually got here 2 or 3 days into fall camp last year. So last year was absolutely crazy. And then at the end of the season, he got the tight end job at Nebraska Kearney, a Division II program in Nebraska. And then we hired the guy that's our O-line GA now, Jacob Roney, who unbelievably great story. He played center at St. John's in Minnesota, a very historic football program, Division III football program in Minnesota. Then when he finished, he wanted to coach, and that was right when COVID hit, and there wasn't very many opportunities out there. And he actually took a D-line job at a Division III school, at another Division III school in Minnesota, coached D-line for 2 years there, then went to Minnesota Duluth and was there with Lauren and worked with the coach D-line at Minnesota Duluth. So he's got 3 years of D-line experience, which I am super excited about, because earlier in the week, as we prepare the O-lineman, he's going to be able to get some advanced work done on our opponent and prepare the scout team and prepare our offensive line about pass rush moves, about things that, little small technique things, alignment of stance, tilts, this, that, and the other, that it takes me to midweek to start getting to our guys. He's going to be able to get that stuff to them early in the week, because that's what he has taught for the last 3 years. And then he's going to be able to coach the scout team to give us those looks starting on Monday or starting on Tuesday. Hey, I want you to use these 3 pass rush moves, because that's what their best defensive end does. He uses these 3 pass rush moves, so we can prepare our guys better earlier in the week in preparation. So I am really, really excited about that. I know that was a very long answer, but we've had 5 guys, in my 5 years here. And hopefully it's not been because I'm running them off, but hopefully it's been because, they've been getting better jobs.
Well, they all say good things about you, so that's really good.
Well,
yeah,
that I forced that.
Well, hey, it's just whether you're bringing somebody different to the clinic next spring or not. It's just who you bring with you. So,
well, we hope Jake stays around a little while. But I'll be honest with you, those guys, and we tell them all, Tim Albin's the greatest. Coach Solich was the greatest with them. our job is to help them further their career and help them work to get to where, their next stop is along their path and their journey. And if that's after one season, if that's after a season and a half, they come to me and say, Coach, I really want this job. I'm going to try to do, if they've done a good job, I'm going to try to do everything I can to help them get a job. Even if I've got to retrain another one the next year, I don't care. If they've done a good job for us, then that's what we ask them to do. And we told them on the front end that one of the benefits of coming to OU is just the connections that our staff has and our ability to maybe help you get a job coming out of here. And that's not that anytime anybody can get a better job, we want to try to help them do that. So that's kind of what our stance has always been. And sometimes that creates a little bit more turnover at that position. But that's what we're in this business for, to help people.
You're 100% right. And so speaking of that, so like I'm a big proponent, especially at high school, and of having is at least two sets of eyes on the offensive line. Whether it's one does guards and guards and centers, and everyone does tackles, where front side, back side, doesn't matter. Just or hell, you can name a co-offensive line coach. I really don't care. Just like it's great in college, you can have like you and a GA, and depending on the level, like Lauren obviously had a lot of experience coaching O-line, so you were able to rely him for certain things that maybe a new guy you can't. But I'm a big proponent of that, whether it's me and somebody else or two different other people. I think it's such you can't watch five guys at once. Like it's just physically impossible. Like It's just I don't care. Like I'm trying to focus on some of our pin and pull stuff, and I got to watch front side. Well, I need my other guy to watch backside. But like where do you start when? I mean, all of them obviously are different levels, and they have different experience levels, and they bring different resources and abilities and knowledge. When you get a new guy, where do you start? Where is your working point?
The first place we start is them understanding how we call, because their first job is going to be to break down film. So where we start, number one, is okay, this is how we call fronts, this is how we call coverages, this is how we call pressures, this is how we call front movements. That's where we begin. And then we begin teaching them our system, because part of breaking down film is also breaking down the opponent's offense. And both by formation as well as by play, because I want to be able to go in and I want to see, every time that somebody ran divide zone versus them, I want to be able to go in there and click on, 2 or 3 buttons and pull that up so I can study it. So, that's where we begin. And then I begin teaching them our calls up front, so they have a general idea and understanding. And then we start diving in with, hey, this is, we're an inside zone football team. So, hey, get a notepad out. We're fixing to hammer inside zone, and all the rules that go along with it, and then all the fundamentals that go along with it. And now here's the drills that we run to teach it. And here's where I would like to plug you in doing these drills, so that now I could take, like you said, the centers and guards, and you take the tackles with Coach Metz and work the tackles and tight ends. Or I'm going to work front side zone combos, and you go take the backside guys and you're working backside zone combos, and then we flip. Or, hey, I'm going to work this drill, and I take all the right side guys, and you take all the left side guys, or whatever, so that we can maximize reps during practice. I begin teaching them that way, and we start, we're an inside zone football team, and we're a man slide football team in protection. And that's where we're going to begin. And then we work down the path all the way to the thing that we do the least amount of. And that way he gets comfortable with that. And I test them all the time. One of the things that I like doing with them is I like them to teach our freshmen. And I sit in the back of the room. And I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut, but I do try to sit in the back of the room, and I'm taking notes, and I want them to install the offense to our young guys. And then as I feel comfortable, then I try to give them a little bit more, because eventually what I would love to be able to do is get them prepared to take over the meeting room. And that way, when they go on to get their own job or their own O-line or their own meeting room, that they don't necessarily ever run the entire meeting room at Ohio University, but I'm going to give them pieces and segments to do. Okay, here's your baby. You take this, and I want you to study it, and then I want you to do a 5-10 minute presentation to the offensive line. Well, then that 5 or 10 minutes may turn into, okay, now I'm going to give you 2 things, and you're going to present one thing on Monday and another thing on Tuesday. And, so just slowly trying to, get them to be able to do exactly what we need them to do to get us ready for ball games. And then secondly, be able to get them ready to take over their own room whenever that time comes for them. So that's kind of how we attack it. I look at it, they've got to be able to break down film. So as quick as I can get them ready to break down film, understand our terminology, how we call things, whether that be from a defensive standpoint or an offensive standpoint. Number 2, they've got to be able to draw cards. So, whether you're using Visio, whether you're using PowerPoint, I try to go ahead and make sure they're ready to do that. So I give them several tasks to make sure that they're ready to do that and able to do that. And then thirdly, their role during practice, and then their role on game day, and get them prepared and ready to do that. And then fourthly, their role of furthering their I almost said education, but furthering their career, and hopefully trying to have a plan to prepare them to be a better football coach and to take over their own room. Or so that's kind of how we go about it.
Now, I've come down there, I think, 3 years for watching practice. 2, I can't keep track. I've been down there so many times, whether it be us meeting privately or watching practice or whatever. And
Right.
your point about giving him a role, it seems every time, depending on who it is, the role changes. Because, what I saw, I'll just use last year's spring to this year's spring, what you were doing, and obviously drill work's different depending on the day and
Right.
have on the line. But how do you determine what their role is in terms of drill wise? Because like I said, what I saw you do this year and what your GA did last year were 2 different,
Right.
essentially.
Whatever they're ready for, and that's I try to press them, to find out what they can handle, what they're ready for, and I'm never going to put them in a situation where they're not ready to handle it. I don't think that's fair to them, and I don't think that's fair to our guys to waste our players' time. So just through the process of teaching, we start our mornings most of the time around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's usually just me and him up at the office, and that's where I am working with them and preparing them to find out what they're ready to handle. Part of it is what is the timing of them getting here. Jake Roney got here late January, probably mid-February, and we started spring ball, end of February. So he was not ready this spring. By the end of spring, I was giving him a lot more than I was early in spring, so part of it's timing. Part of it is, a guy that, Jake Roney, Lauren Inslee had coached a lot of football before I got them here. So they understand how to organize a drill. They understand when they've got 8 guys, how to get that divided up. And it doesn't take them a long time. They've already been through that versus, hey, I got 12 in this group and then I got 8 in this group, and to get it divided up so the drill operates efficiently, because it's, as well as I do, it's not always just knowing the game of football. It's being able to organize it where you're efficient doing it. So, their experience as well, I think, factors into it. And then I guess ultimately their knowledge, what are they ready to handle and what are they ready to do? And I think all 3 of those factors are going to determine when and what you give certain guys.
Okay. And then you mentioned like you give them you allow them to teach to your freshmen. So obviously the freshmen learn, but at the same time, they're able to get their experience as well. How do you actually, I'll rephrase this. Is there any, like, as you're taking notes in the back and resisting the urge to do because I know you, like you've said,
Yes.
but I know you're not going to just sit there and just not say.
Yes. Right.
Is there anything common, like details that you see that they miss, like for each one of them, or is it just different every time? For when they're installing stuff, like obviously I don't need these specific scheme details, but is there like a common thread? Is it a footwork thing? Is it a call thing? And I know that might vary a little bit by when they get there, but like, is there anything you notice that there's a commonality that just it happens, or you maybe need to work better at coaching them up on?
I think one of the big areas I need to work better at coaching them up on, which is probably one of the big common things, that is just, organization of thoughts and ideas, and then buzzwords to really get those guys to be able to grasp onto. When you're just first learning something, as well as I do, sometimes you over talk because you're trying to make sure that you give so much information, because you don't know exactly what are the exact things that you really need to hit on. So you try to cover everything. So what I try to do is I try to narrow their focus down into some, hey, these are the low hanging fruit. These are the things that we got to make sure that they know about this, and this. You know what I mean? And then don't try to cover, I could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours about inside zone. But if I do that, I'm going to lose the kid. So, hey, here's the low hanging fruit, and here's the low hanging fruit for today. And we want to get this point across. And here's the way that we get this point across. Then we want to show them film. Then we want to get them up on their feet and make sure they can do it. And then we want to get their butt out of there, because, too much is too much. And so to me but I also have to fight that myself. I want to tell people everything I know. Not because I want to sound like the smartest guy in the room, but I want to make sure that I didn't leave something out for them. And so I fight that as well. And then those little things that you just pick up from doing it for a while, little buzzwords, little this, little that if you don't have the experience, you just don't know that you don't know, or you haven't developed those for yourself yet. And when I'm going through it with them, I may not think to give that to them, but when I'm up coaching it, I do, so I would say those things are the big things. Find your low hanging fruit and make sure they're giving the kid the low hanging fruit. Here's what you need to know about a cover gap combo on inside zone, and then those little bitty buzzwords and those little bitty things for those young guys to grab onto and hold on to, I would say is the big thing that I see.
No, I was just curious because I didn't know there was a commonality or anything on that that you saw. So, um, real quick, we talked a little about beforehand, but I did see that half the staff had a very good weekend with the kids and dinners and brunches um, and you were talking up the lake. How'd all that go? We talked
Went
about
good. Went
good.
good. I think Coach Isfording and the quarterbacks had a little golf tournament, and then had some food after, and then the O line I know we went to Lake Hope, and they've got an unbelievable. I'm plugging them right now, but they've got an unbelievable Sunday brunch buffet, and I mean it is pitched to you win, and the guys. I mean, I was worried about some of them driving home after. I was kind of worried they got so full that I was worried that some of them were going to fall asleep behind the wheel, maybe coming home. But I mean, it was delicious and just a great time. Those times to bond when you're not in the facility, when you're at my house or when you're at a restaurant together, and the conversations are different, and those things are so very, very important because when I was younger, I used to think it was all about the X's and O's. And then as I learned recruiting, it's about the Johnnies and Joes. But the older I get, it's really not about either one of those things. Both of those things are certainly important. To me, it's about the guys that you have coming together and becoming a team. And that is the secret that Tim Alvin is the absolute best at it. He is unbelievable at it, and really pushes us, that direction. I've learned more from he and Coach Solich, about that and my time. That it's about planning those things, thinking about those things. It's not just thinking about a new way to run a different play. It's thinking about the guys that you have and making sure that they really know that they're loved, and that they are thought about, that they're not an afterthought, that their lives are very, very important, and I've learned from some of the best here at that. It's been a huge part of my growth here.
No, good, coach. And then I mean, the last little thing I want to ask you is just I think I ask you a variation of this every time, but I'm gonna ask you I ask just in general anyways. Just is there any, especially for either newer O line coaches, young O line coaches, GAs, assistant O line coaches, any suggestions, recommendation, tips, besides buying your Coach 2 videos?
No, don't do that.
I know you won't plug it, but I will. But besides that, in all seriousness, is there anything that you would recommend, especially for those younger or newer coaches?
Study. Study as much as you can possibly study. I remember as a young coach, I got the opportunity to go to the Cool Clinic in Cincinnati, and I was just absolutely floored by the level of knowledge of football and I thought at 29 years old that I thought I knew a lot of football. And then I get up and hear Coach McNally and Coach Alexander and Coach Mudd and some of those guys, and I realized that I didn't know my butt from a hole in the ground. And but the information was harder to probably get your hands on at that time because there wasn't the internet and Twitter and all that where you can find things now. You had to buy old cassette, not cassette, but VCR tapes, and that's what everything was done on. And I bought, when I was there, I bought the clinic tapes from that year, and I really think I broke those in VCRs because I just watched them so much and I took so many notes from those things So I think just constantly studying, and then there was so much that Coach McNally talked about that, to be real honest with you, I didn't know. So I guess my next point besides studying is, if it's something that you don't know, don't do it. Go find it and go learn it before you do it. Because as a young coach, I think your guys can see through pretty quickly if you don't really know something. And just because it's a cool thing that you saw somebody do, if you don't know it, don't do it. Go find it and then do it. But knowing it is not only knowing it when it works right, but knowing it is knowing how to fix it. I went to do a clinic in Japan when I was coaching the CFL, and it would amaze you, the gentleman that we were working with, it would absolutely amaze you their amount of memorization of playbooks. I mean, literally, if you said, okay, how did Nebraska block in 1979 their Belly G series? I mean, they could just rattle it off. I mean, they knew the playbook inside and out, but they didn't have knowledge of the plays. They didn't know how the play worked, how it went together, when to call it, and then when it didn't work, how to fix it, how to tweak it, and how to fix it. So that they knew the memorization of it, but they didn't know the knowledge of what they had memorized. And I would stress to young coaches, young O-line coaches, or young coaches in general, is find you a couple things that you know and do those things, because you're going to believe in them. When I go fishing, I love fishing with a plastic worm. I've got a lot of confidence when I am throwing a plastic worm. When I throw a spinnerbait, I don't know how to fish the spinnerbait, so I don't have any confidence when I throw it. And the guy at the front of the boat can be catching fish after fish after fish on a spinnerbait, and I will not catch a fish on a spinnerbait because I don't know how to work it. I don't know what the problems are, and I don't know how to tweak it to fix it when there's something wrong. So I have no confidence in it. And it's just a little stupid illustration, but hey, don't go fishing with a spinnerbait if you don't know how to fish with a spinnerbait. Use the plastic worm. You will catch more fish. You will gain more yards. You will score more points. You will win more football games using the plastic worm than you will trying something that you see somebody else doing, but you don't know what it is. That would be probably the biggest things. And then I don't think kids are as committed to the game of football or to anything as they used to be. So therefore, well, let me rephrase how I said that. I think they are. I think you just got to find different ways to see their drive, and it's just not out there like it was in our day. And that's where the Tim Albin thing is. That's where, them knowing that you love them, they're going to go out and work for you if that's the case. And I probably didn't know that well enough as a young coach, and I know things have changed and times have changed, but being able to have fun doing what you do and not make it just a beat each other in the head every day we're together and nobody's having any fun, that's not going to get it done anymore. So finding different ways to enjoy being around those guys and have fun while you're doing it, I think, is hugely important.
Perfect, Coach. So coaches, as always, like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. 2, as I say every time I get done with Coach Rudolph, there's 18 million resources he has everywhere. Got stuff on my channel from when we've talked multiple other times. The Canadian channel, 3 Down Development, if I remember that correctly. He's got
I think that's it. Yeah.
You got some really good stuff on there as well, where you just went. Like, it's some really, really good stuff. Got all of his Coach 2 videos, which he won't promote himself, but I'll promote for him. And there's probably more stuff I can't think of. He'll probably speak at our clinic again in the spring, like he has the past 2 years, because he's just
if I'm ever not invited, then I know that I've not done a good job. So if you don't invite me, then I'm gonna take that to heart.
You are always one of the most viewed people when you're there, and I will also say you always usually have the best Q&A portion with the crowd. Like, in terms of asking questions, the group that comes see you usually does a good job, and you do a good job of answering most of those questions during, before, and after.
You know what? And just for me, I've gotten so much, everything that I do, everything that we do offensive line wise, I've learned from somebody else. And too many times in my career, I thought that I knew, and really when I got to talking to people, I really didn't know anything. So just that thirst for knowledge, both to share what I've been given from other people, as well as to get, because I don't know stuff and I want to learn. And my dad taught me a long time ago that, he's just an old high school football coach in Mississippi. And I say it that way, just an old high school football coach, because there's not much better in the world. And I love sharing with those guys. He did it for 40 or 45 years. And I owe so much to him, and I owe so much to the game of football, and I owe so much to high school coaches. Him and those guys that believed in me, they are the reasons that I am where I am today. So anytime I get an opportunity to hopefully give back, I take that very, very seriously.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, I think we as high school coaches appreciate it. I think we appreciate the access you give us, and the willingness to work with us. Like, I came down to watch spring ball, and you got me and oh God, I just forgot his name real quick. The head coach at I had his son speak at my clinic, and now I'm just blanking on both their last names. Was it Chill Coffee?
Was it Coach Bartholomew?
Bartholomew. I just could
Yep.
not place on his B. I couldn't remember. Like, me and Coach Bartholomew sitting there, and you're just talking to both of us and helping us both, and it's just good. A, it's good to see him, but like B, like me and him. You treated us. Yelled at both of us at one point to come on closer on the field. So like I said, we as coaches here appreciate it. And then, like, I appreciate your friendship over the past couple of years since we started talking. And like I said, we'll talk every couple weeks and check in on each other. And like I said, coaches, make sure you give him a follow. Check out all of his stuff. There is hours upon hours, not just inside zone stuff, but pass pro and countless other things that Coach has. It is just a wealth of knowledge. Otherwise, that is our episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.
Thank you, brother.